side topics. Your team likes to go off onto random topics and routes when they're in a meeting. Never fear, because there is a way to solve that. I'm gonna take you through how I overcome people going off on tangents in meetings. And I have 3 things that I do that always seem to work. So I'm gonna share that with you today, and hopefully you can start using those in your meetings to ensure that your meetings run as effectively as possible. My name is Lowell, and I help teams get great at collaborating and problem solving. Sticky note, I love sticky notes. How do I stop folks going off on tangents? Yes. So this is something that happens in a lot of meetings, and it happens to the best facilitators. It happens to everyone. So don't feel like you're alone with this. If you don't have, now before I had these tools, I really didn't know what to do. I didn't have the confidence to steer people in the right direction. I thought that I was being rude. I just didn't have the toolkit to get people to stay on track. And the thing is, everybody in that meeting wants to stay on track, but they're just overcome with emotion that they need to talk about these other topics because they seem slightly relevant, that they just can't stick to the path. Luckily, there's some key things that we can do, and these things I do all the time, and they work. I hope they work for you. The first thing that I do when I'm having a meeting is to make sure that there is an agenda, that there are points in the agenda, and that people have the agenda before the meeting starts, and they have a chance to input things that they may want to have in the agenda. Now, you may not have time to allow for that, so if you have regular meetings, then you can have a line item that's called any other business that allows the space for 10 or 5 minutes for topics that weren't previously accounted for. So this gives people an opportunity to at least raise those topics. And if we can't go into detail on them in that call at that very moment, then at least we can make a plan for addressing them. Whether that's another meeting, staying on, whether it's another meeting or following up by email or whatever, at least it's been addressed and a plan's been made for it. That's a really good point, the any other business thing. That may be down as a point. Let's put that as a point, right? Okay, any other business in the agenda item, and any other business within that. Now, the next thing, when you're actually on the meeting, we need to be taking into consideration a few things. If you're facilitating the meeting and hosting the meeting, read the agenda again and let people know that we have this amount of time to go through these topics. And if we start going off topic, then you're asking them permission to bring us back on track. If this is your team, they're your direct reports, everybody knows each other, they know that you run this meeting every week or every day or whatever, then you might not need to ask for permission. You're just gonna say, listen guys, this is what's on topic, we're gonna stick to that and just move forward, right? If you are facilitating a workshop or a meeting where 1, you don't know the people, 2, they might be really senior, 3, they don't know each other, an air of awkwardness and on a lack of understanding and alignment on the political hierarchy of the meeting may cause tension. So this is a really good point to ask for permission. So that's one thing that I really love doing, and I've gotten feedback from as high as you can go, leaders of companies saying that I really appreciate when you started the meeting that you asked us for permission to interrupt us. And that's what I do. It's exactly what I do. I ask, okay guys, so we've got 2 hours for this meeting. The agenda is packed, and I know that each of you really want us to get through the points that are here. Now, in order for us to do that, we are going to have to run a tight ship. We're going to have to run to time. So I'm asking you permission to allow me to interrupt you and for us to move the conversation on if we start rat holing, if we start going off on tangents or discussing things that aren't on the agenda. Are you happy for me to do that? And most of the time they'll say yes. In fact, I never had anybody say no to me. If you have somebody say no to you, leave a comment and let me know, right? Because we need to address these things. And the last thing that I love to do is my magic trick. This is this little thing here. Let me put down my clicker to tell you about this. You may have heard of this, but a lot of people don't understand the power of this technique, right? So I am gonna let you know this right now, that it is super powerful. The parking lot. The parking lot is a space that you define at the start of meetings, and I have them in almost all of my meetings and workshops. Or if I forget, I create one on the fly and just shove stuff in there. A parking lot allows you to take topics that arise in the meeting, that we don't have time to address, and park them in the parking lot to be addressed at another point in time. Now, this can be a bit tricky to get right. You don't want it to come across as if the parking lot is some kind of dumping ground where you just shove all of the things that you don't want people to talk about and you never address them in future. It's important that in your follow-up communications, well, scrap that, before we get to follow-up communications, if you have time at the end of the meeting, then you say, we're going to address the things in the parking lot if we have time at the end of the meeting. And if you do, go ahead and address those points. If you don't, then tell people once you announce the parking lot that this will be addressed in follow-up comms, so that people don't feel like their ideas are being discarded. They're literally just being put aside to be addressed at a later stage. However, it is your responsibility as the meeting facilitator to ensure that this is actually done, and that people's points are addressed at some point in time. Don't leave them hanging. Let people feel important. Respect people and the points that they put forward. Otherwise, they'll shut down and you won't get ideas out of them again. We don't want to be building a negative culture in our teams, so it's important that we respect people's points and we elevate them and give them the time they need to be addressed. And that's it. Those are the things that I do to ensure that I stop people from rat holing and from going off on tangents. They are... and another thing that I do to stop people from going off on tangents is to interrupting. And this is the trickiest part, right? Because everything else that we have spoken about, and I'm just reading from my little sticky here. The thing that causes the most contention is interrupting, because you've already asked for permission to interrupt people if they start going off on tangents. I'm still learning how to do this, and honestly, you just get better with time. The first thing that you need to do is to have confidence in yourself. You've already asked for permission, and if it helps, just say, Jamie, sorry, I apologize, but allow me to interrupt you here for a second. I'm sorry to stop your flow, but it seems like we are now talking about a topic that is not on the agenda. However, it's really useful. Let me put it in the parking lot so we can address it later on in the meeting, so that we can really stick to time, because time is of the essence here and we want to stay on track. Are you all right with that? And then he'll be like, oh, let me just finish my point. Or you can just give them a few seconds to wrap up and then put it in the parking lot. If this starts happening a lot, then you're just gonna have to get comfortable with interrupting a lot and saying, okay guys, I am just wanting to tell you what's happening here. We have 30 minutes left in the meeting and we have 40 minutes of talking items left. We're not gonna finish on time. So what do you want to do right now? Do you want to continue with the agenda items, or you're thinking that right now the discussion that we're having here is more important and you would like to continue with that as a point of priority? And then just allow the team to make a decision and make sure that everybody has a chance to speak. Don't just take the first person who says, oh, I want to continue, or let's park it. Have a round robin and get everybody's ideas and then get the decider or the person who has the most clout or the most responsibility in the room, the person who's probably leading the department or leading the project, get them to have the last say. Are you happy with this? And then they will say, yes, I am, or no, let's continue with the agenda items. So it really just comes down to confidence, and some little tips that I like to do when people are taking a breath, because they're going to have to breathe at some point. Just interrupt there. When they pause or somebody else is trying to butt in to have their say, before you weigh in, Mary, on what Jamie's saying, let me just say this first. So it's finding those key moments where you're able to have a voice. Sometimes you're just going to have to shout over people. Ooh, I don't like doing it, but sometimes things get really heated and you need to lay down the law with your facilitator powers and let people know where they are at. It's not that you're trying to control people, it's that we are trying to control the flow of the meeting and to really guide the team to getting the outcome that they want at the end of the meeting. So those are the things. Let's recap, because I feel like that was a lot. How do I stop folks from going off on tangents? Strong agenda, ask them permission to interrupt them, feeling confident and knowing the cues of when and how to interrupt them, and creating a parking lot for points that are not on the agenda. So those are my tips. It was four tips. So I hope that was helpful and that you have the tools now to make your meetings run more effectively and to stop people from rat holing, black holing, going off on tangents. If this was useful, please give it a thumbs up, like this video, and subscribe to this channel. We've got loads more content coming up on how to build stronger, more effective teams that can collaborate and innovate their way out of anything. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.